Hi guys, and here we are for the fifth video, also the fifth view controller, I think, for the fonts application in Chapter 9 of the iOS development. So this, if you'll remember, this view is not a table view. It consists of an example of the font in a given size, and a slider to adjust that size, and a switch to include it or uninclude it in the favorites. And we're going to make use of that custom class we defined at the very beginning for the favorites list. So let's get started with that. And as usual, we're going to need a class and a storyboard scene. We'll add the class first. And it's a Cocoa Touch class. We're going to call this one Font Info View Controller. Follow the book's convention, and it is just a UI view controller. Let's grab some code from the book. Source code for the outlets, action methods, and view did load. And that's really all we're going to need. We don't need a data source because we're not a table view. So in terms of properties, we've got the font, which is a UI font, the font we're displaying. We've got a Boolean called favorite, which tells whether or not the font is in the current one being displayed is in the favorites or not. We'll initialize that to false. Outlets for essentially everything that's going to show up on the screen. In view did load, we've got a fair amount of work to do. To set up the labels. So the font we're going to use in the sample label, we're going to call one of them font sample label, font size label, font size slider, and font and favorite switch are the names of the things we're adding. The text we'll display in the font sample is the alphabet, upper and lower, and numbers. The slider we'll initially set to the point size that we're selecting, and the text of the size label will be the size in numbers, and we'll set the switch condition to be whatever condition the favorite variable has at the moment. So we're going to have to get some stuff in the prepare method from the font list view controller, obviously, to make things work. Let's grab our action methods now for the slider and the button, slider and the switch. And we'll use the width size method of a font to show what it looks like in the particular slider values. So a font can be you can set, there's nothing magical about that set of font sizes we picked in the font sizes view controller. It can be any integer number, though it gets less useful the bigger it gets. I think 72-point fonts are an inch tall, which is a huge fraction of the screen on most devices. But anyway, that's there. And then toggle favorite. We'll grab the shared favorites list and do the appropriate thing in terms of adding or removing this font name from the favorites list based on the state of the switch. And since we use the sender argument to get the outlet to the switch, that's why we need an outlet for the switch in addition to its action method. Well, no, we don't. we're using the argument to the action method. We actually don't use the outlet to the switch except here. Okay, that's, I believe, everything we need to do in code. Not quite. Let's grab the prepare function before we start doing the other segue. We're going to have to do something a little bit clever here because this is the first time we've had two segues from a given cell. So we've got to be able to indicate which segue is from the cell itself and which is from the detail disclosure. But let's go back to the font list view controller. That'll be the parent one. And we're going to change the prepare function to check the identifier of the segue. We haven't given segues identifiers yet, but you've got to if you've got more than one segue that'll call the same prepare method going out of a given view controller. So you notice there was an error before when we did this, but there's not an error now. The error now that's not there is because we've added this font info view controller, which will be the view controller if we have the other type of segues. And we got a bunch of wiring to do in the storyboard, and let's get started with that. First thing we've got to do is add a view controller for, where do I want to put it? I'm going to just put it out here. So let's find a regular view controller. Put it in the storyboard here. And the class we're going to implement is the font info view controller, the one we're just writing. And the things we want here in this view controller, we're going to need a slider. The slider down here. We'll put the number of the font that's going to be displayed in the slider beside it. So get a label. And we'll just put 22 in there for starter. We also need a big label for the fonts example. We'll center that. No, I don't think I even want it centered. I want it here, and I want it huge, so that the font can go very big, and we'll still display some of it. So we'll make it that big, and we need our switch also. And we need a label to tell what the switch does. So I'll get another label. And this one's just going to say whether or not we're going to include it in favorites or not. Include in favorites. Okay. Now, to do this properly, you ought to set up a bunch of constraints here. I'm not going to do that. I've got an extra label down here. Let's get rid of it. I'm going to trust that you could, this is just sort of the normal constraint setting stuff. I would pin this to the sides and the top, pin this to the bottom and the left and the label, pin the label to the right and the bottom, pin this to here and here, pin this to here and here, and I think you'd be done. Something like that. So, but I'm not going to bother with it because the main thing I want to show is how to make this work, not another example of constraints. So I've got to hook up the action methods and outlets for sure, so let's get the assistant editor up. And since I had set this to be the font info view controller, I get what I thought I should get. And let's see now if I can connect things up. The font sample label is this one. The font size label is this one. They don't need any connections to that label. The font size slider here, and the favorite switch here. We've connected our outlets. Let's see if we can connect our action methods. I think to do that, I have to go the other direction. I'll control drag. Well, let's see. I want to control drag. The slider. Can I do it this way? Yes. Send events. Let's go here. And that connected up the right thing. And we'll control drag the switch also to the view controller and toggle favorite with sender. Now, for the view, we can check that all this is right in one place fairly easily. We'll select the view controller, go to its connections inspector, and it's showing for each of the outlets what it's connected to, and for each of the actions what it's connected to. And that's all looking right. What we've got to yet do is create a segue. And like I said, we're going to be segueing from, let's get rid of this assistant editor. We're done with that. We need to see more of the storyboard. We're segueing from the font list view controller, but we're not segueing from the cell itself. We're segueing from the accessory. So I'll see if I can do, let me control drag across this view controller, and hopefully it'll, no, it's not showing me the other one. Let me scroll this so that hopefully I can get them both in the same screen at the same time. Okay, select the cell, control drag over here, and now instead of a selection segue, I'm going to do accessory action, and the thing I want to do is show this view controller. And I get another, I get an arrow here, and it's sort of overlapping here, but I've got to set the names of these segues to be the what I want them to be. For this segue over here, which is the segue to the sizes, we'll go to the attributes inspector for the segue, and the identifier we want to use here, I believe, is show font sizes. And that's the one that matters because that's what we pick in the prototype, I'm sorry, in the prepare function. We pick the other segue, and I'm going to set that to be show font info. And then we'll go back and check it in the prepare method of the font list view controller. Yes, show font sizes. And I just have to call this one something different. And we should be good. And I think I've done everything I need to do now. So what should happen differently now is when I'm looking at the list of fonts in a font family, that I can go to that font info view controller. Okay, let's pick a font. So our family, we'll look at the info view for American Typewriter Bold. Ooh, I need to change. I didn't set the right size ranges on the slider. I need to change that. Include in favorites. Not sure that's going to work either, but we'll go back and we'll see now what we've got going on. I'm pretty sure we didn't set the segue for the font families for the favorites. Now you'll see that my favorite fonts has shown up. I click on favorites, but nothing's happened because I haven't set that segue up yet. So I need to do that. I also need to fix the slider to be a useful range. And something like the default range is 0 to 1, something like 1 to 200 would be a reasonable range. Or I don't know, I'm just going to go 1 to 72 because I think that's plenty. So I'll go to my storyboard, go to my font info view controller, select the slider. Let's set our initial value, or no, the initial value gets set for us. So we're just going to set the minimum. Let's go 8 minimum, 72 maximum or something. That's a reasonable range of fonts to look at. And in terms of the segue from the favorite cell, the code should handle showing favorites instead of showing a font family, but I have to set up a segue from this prototype cell. So I'm going to control drag there, and it's just a section, a segue, a selection segue that will show. Let's see if we fixed our problems. Okay. Let's go look at the info for our font and see if we slide. And you can see now the font does get bigger. I should make my label larger. Some number combinations don't fit. But it is scaling. I'll include it in the favorites. And I'll actually have 2 in my favorites now, I believe, because even though the other one wasn't displaying, it should have set it up and stored it in the defaults. So we'll go back to our root view controller, scroll through down to our favorite fonts, and now when we select we get one of the fonts, and we can look at its size, or we can look at its detail. I'm not sure we got exactly the one we asked for. Let's try to add another. Oops. Need to select the disclosure. The favorites. So something's still not quite working right in terms of getting things into our favorites. And I think there's probably a piece of code that still needs to be commented back in one of the prepare functions. We've also got another topic, and that's to do, and that's editing. That is deleting and rearranging things in the favorites list. So I'll fix my mistake and come back in the sixth and final video